In this tutorial, I will show you how to create a 3D title. To begin, I'm going to click New Composition, and this is in Adobe After Effects, and I want to set my composition settings. This particular composition is going to be 4K, so make sure that lock aspect ratio is unchecked, and I'm going to punch in 4096 by 2160, and the frame rate for my project is going to be 24 frames per second. So 4096, uncheck this, 2160, frame rate of 24. And I'm going to click OK. That gives me this composition here. There's nothing in it. Next thing I want to do is create a camera. I'm going to click Layer, New Camera. And it asks about this. I'm just going to leave the settings where they are. And then it gives me this little warning here. I'll just click OK. That's all right. Currently I'm viewing from active camera. I'm going to switch to camera 1. Now that hasn't changed anything. Reason I'm going to choose this camera setting is because it will be easier to view things in 3D. So I've created a camera. Other than that, it shouldn't look any different. Now I want to create a text layer. I could click this horizontal text type tool, but instead I'm going to choose Layer, New, and I'm going to choose Text. And that puts my cursor right in the middle. And I'm going to type in the title of this text. Zoom in a little bit. So there it is. I do notice that it's a little too small for this. So I'm going to select it here in the timeline, and I'm going to increase the size of it, and that's going to increase my font size. And I'm going to go from Helvetica, though there's different fonts in here under your character, you can change it, and some will have different styles. For this project, I'm going to choose Impact, and it doesn't have an italic in here in this drop-down menu, so I'm going to do a faux italic. I think I'm going to increase the size a little bit more. I fill it up. And I want to align it next. In paragraph, it is already centered, but it's not aligned to the frame here, to my composition. So I'm going to go to Align, Align horizontally, and then Align vertically. Now it's in the middle. Next thing I want to do is make this title layer, this text layer, 3D. I click this checkbox here, and now it is a 3D layer. If I expand this, then you can see that I can change some things here, though geometry options is grayed out. I'm going to show you how this is a 3D layer, just so you can have an idea. You can kind of see that I've got my 3D tools here, but now in my transform, I have X, Y, and Z. I'm going to rotate it in the Y so you can kind of see what it looks like. See, it is 3D, but it is only kind of two-dimensional. It's like a plane, it's flat, a flat surface. So I'm going to leave that rotated so we can kind of see the effects of this. The next thing I need to do is change the renderer from this classic 3D that I'm currently in, and I'm going to change that to Cinema 4D. So under here, I choose Cinema 4D. And I'm going to leave these settings, everything in here the way it is. Just tells me what is enabled and what is disabled. And I click OK. Now nothing has happened yet for this because I haven't changed the geometry. I'm going to collapse this transform and open up the geometry. But now it's not grayed out anymore. I can extrude this. You'll notice that it is extruding. Problem is, though, it's just using the font color both for the front and the sides. There's no shading to it. So in order to get some shading, I'm going to add a new, and I'm going to add a new light. So Layer, New, Light. And you can change whatever colors you want for this. You can use a white one. I'm going to use a slightly blue light. And I'll click OK to that, and I'll leave these things here. Click OK. Now you notice I have some shading. And there is my light right here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see that font. Now, the next thing I want to do is add a little bit of a bevel to this font. In order to do that, I can increase this, but you'll notice nothing's happened yet because I need to give it a bevel style. I'm going to use an angular bevel style. And now if I zoom in here, you can see I've got this bevel to it. I think that'll work. And it could be pretty much done if you wanted it like that, but I want to add some more lights and I want to animate it. So get my select tool and I'm going to move this light a little bit here because I'm going to create one more light. I'm going to create a light that's behind here. Now it is hard to kind of eye that up. That's why we created this camera as our first step. So I'm going to add a second light after I move this one over just a little bit. And under layer, I'm going to choose layer, new, and light. This light, I want it to be a little bit yellow. But whatever works for your particular project. But I want to use this kind of a contrasting yellow and blue. Click OK and click OK. Now you'll notice that they're kind of almost on the same plane. So I'm going to see what this looks like in 3 dimensions. And instead of viewing from camera 1, I'm going to go to custom view 1. So from camera 1 to custom view 1. And I'm going to click up here. And I don't know if you had the unified camera tool up or not, but I'm going to go to orbit camera tool. So I'm clicking and holding an orbit camera tool. And now I can rotate and see what this looks like in 3 dimensions. This represents my camera. And this represents my different lights. So this is the yellowish one and this is the bluish one. So now when I go to this select tool, I can move, oops, I moved my font. I'm going to move this light. I'm going to move it kind of behind. And I'm going to move this one. I want to move it actually behind the camera. So in order to do that, I want to view in 3D here, zooming out some. I'm going to move this light behind the camera. So now I've got one that's behind the text, and I've got one that's behind the camera. And again, I've been doing this in custom view 1. Now I'm going to go back to camera 1 and see what it looks like. And now you can see the effects of those lights, and especially because I have that bevel on. Now, if the light is too intense, then you can change that. But I think this will work for now. I'm going to kind of center this a little in my view. You cannot do the align. It's not going to work anymore because I'm using a 3D layer. So that align only works on the 2D layers. But I think that's a good starting point. Now what I want to happen, let me go back to custom view 1. And I'm going to orbit my camera. So what I want to happen is I want this title to fly toward the camera and kind of smash almost like right through it. So in order for that to happen, I'm going to go back to camera 1. So this is where I'm kind of starting from. And I'm going to go to my transform, and I'm going to clock my position and my X, Y, and Z rotation. So I want it to fly toward. And that starts things off. Let's say I want this to take place over 5 seconds. So now I'm at 5 seconds between the 4 and the 6 there. And I'm going to change the position. So I'm going to click this and drag to the left. And as I drag to the left, it's going into the negative, and you can kind of see that those coordinates are changing. And also the light is changing because it is moving in 3-dimensional space. And maybe I'll have it rotate as well. So I'm going to rotate this X a little bit. And same thing, I'm going to rotate the Z just a little. Maybe a lot. Let's see. I'm going to adjust that position, so I go get my select tool. So it's kind of rotated some, and then I'm going to have it kind of continue. And if I want to have a better idea of how that's going, I can change from camera 1 to custom view 1. and orbit the camera. So you can see where it is in three-dimensional space now. So it's kind of flying toward the camera. Get my select tool, and I can actually just drag these X and Z, and I'm just going to move it right beyond the camera. So now it kind of flies right through the camera area. Go back to camera 1. Now it's disappeared because it flew past the camera. So if I back this up and hit play, so it's kind of flying, maybe it's going a little bit too high, and I'll change that a little bit later. But I just want to see what this looks like. So yeah, it's definitely going to fly over camera, so I just need to adjust my Y position. So I know that's going to go in the wrong place. So again, I'm going to view from, go to custom view 1, and I'm holding the center mouse so I can see that, and I can see that that's why it happened, because that point right there is above. So I'm going to drop that down, that finishing position or that end position. And go back to camera 1. It flies over. I think I'm going to change that again, but I think you get the point. That's how you can animate it. I'm just going to tweak this a little bit and get it to where I want it. And I think that will do. So let's take a look at that rendered. And I just adjusted the endpoints of that. And then it kind of flies through. It's going to kind of fly through this. And it's actually going to crash through this C area and rotate a little bit. I think that will work for this. So as it kind of goes black, that is a good transition. I'm going to trim that last part off later in Adobe Premiere. So that's how you can do your 3D titles in Adobe After Effects. There's a lot more you can do, and this was a real quick and simple one. But the main things were converting that rendering environment from classic 3D to Cinema 4D, also using a camera and using the different viewpoints, and a little bit of that geometry that you can do in here. And of course the lights, and those are going to react just the way they do in your other projects. And that is how to do a 3D title in Adobe After Effects.